I think I started to talk about this a little bit last podcast, but we didn't go into detail. I rode a lot of old bikes,
Yep.
right? I think I mentioned that at least.
Mm-hmm.
In riding the old bikes, I was also riding on a track that was very like Unadilla-esque, right?
Old
Rollers
school
to
Euro.
nothing,
Yep.
hard pack, rocky, stony on top, kind of moon dust drifting type of, right? Like just old school.
Yeah.
So old school bike, old school style track. And what I realized was that I started to experiment. Okay, attack position standing up, exactly how I would teach now. And it works beautifully on the old bikes. Sitting position, exactly how I teach now with that upright posture works extremely well. But I found myself flat tracking it more. So what I started to think about in my head is when I was flat tracking it, I was putting my inside foot out versus leaving the foot on. And it sort of got me thinking, okay, if you rewind to kind of the origin of the sport here and what the conditions, what people were riding and the bikes that they were riding on, I think it's less about the bikes they were riding on. I think it was more about the conditions they were riding in. So let's just put it that way. Old school, the conditions they were riding in, these guys were all putting their foot out. I think it stemmed more from the marbly, flat track, dusty, baked over type of conditions. And then it just developed from that because I wouldn't put my foot out straight. I would bend at the knee and just hover it off the foot peg a little bit. And it just gave me a little more leeway to lean the bike underneath me.
Gotcha. And describe that flat tracking a little bit too for people who may not be as familiar with sort of that technique or how that translates differently to like what they would see you do on video.
As soon as you get more of a deeper rut, you can still let the bike lean a little bit underneath you, but it's very, very, very subtle. You more so are sitting in the flat part of the seat and leaning with the bike. In conditions like this, where there was no rut at all, I'm sitting more with the crack of my butt on the corner of the seat. I'm really leaning that thing over under me quite a bit. Inside arm isn't full extension, but it's getting close. Outside arm is, at quite an angle. Like I'm at a proper acute angle with that outside arm. And I found it difficult to leave both feet on the pegs when I was leaning the bike in a flat track situation that much. So I just bent knee, foot off the peg just by maybe a foot or so. And less than that, probably even. And it just allowed that bike a little bit more room to wiggle underneath me. And as I was experimenting and practicing that, I was able to go really fast on that bike, number one. But it made me realize why the sport maybe evolved the way that it did. And then as the track started to evolve into these deeper ruts, people just assume that the foot should still go out. And instead of doing the bent knee, they then start going straight leg and just raising it to go higher and up and out of the way. And now we're getting to the next evolution of that, which is just stand later into the turn and leave the feet on the pegs, and it's easier. So I guess let's talk about Hangtown quickly again. If you watch Hangtown, in anything that started to have a deep rut whatsoever, notice how Jet stands until the 50% mark in the corner or later. If you watch Fox Raceway, it was more rutted because a lot of the corners were deeper. You'd watch Jet stand at least to the 50% mark, in some situations 80% of the way through. And then maybe he'd let the foot hang kind of how I just described at the very end, even though that's not necessary. But yeah, it just made me think of the evolution of it a little bit. And it was fun to stay out there for a while and experiment with it and see what worked better. If you guys enjoyed that podcast clip, you can listen to full episodes on Apple Music and Spotify. And make sure, if you haven't already, join our community inside of the Moto Academy app. Go to themotoacademy.com today. I'll see you guys inside the community.